Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about fragrances or fragrance lines or perfumes or colognes that I will not ever be reviewing on this channel. So let's get right into it to see what you think of this list. So this video I have put together because I have seen a lot of questions as to why I don't review certain brands, why I don't review certain, fragrances. Some of them are more popular and maybe I should be reviewing them and maybe my channel will go viral someday and I'll be able to buy every fragrance under the sun. I don't want that, but I'm just saying. But I put this list together because these are fragrances that I will not be reviewing. I do not have any interest in reviewing them, and I'll give you the reasons as to why. So first on the list, I have Tom Ford. Now I have reviewed quite a bit of Tom Ford fragrances on this channel. The thing about Tom Ford is at the time when I was reviewing him, I worked for the brand and I really did enjoy the fragrance collection. I think that whenever I first worked for them, when they first launched Private Blend, they were a brand that was definitely very innovative. They were very different. They had launched Black Orchid, which was a very revolutionary fragrance, especially in the time that it came out in, which we were used to the Acqua di Gios, Gucci Sports, Nautica Voyage, Luna Rosa by Prada. Those type of fragrances were, very freshy, clean, and then you had your Miss Dior's and Coco Mademoiselles and J'adores, which are still around. But at the time when Tom Ford launched Black Orchid, it was a very different fragrance for the time. At the time Daisy was a very big trendy fragrance, and because of that I think Tom Ford really did something very different, very out of the box, and it was a very deep, dark, sexy type of brand. Then they launched Private Blend, and I think that they launched a lot of these fragrances without any constraints or rules. They were not kept in this box that, people have to like it. We're not launching a fragrance that it's going to be a mass market, and I think that they've lost that touch. I think they've lost it with their pricing when it comes to the actual fragrances, because if we go back to history and we go back to history of fragrances for fashion couture houses, historically speaking, fragrances were launched so you could get something affordable. So people were not able to go to Chanel back in the 20s and get a couture gown or a couture suit or a jacket or a hat. So what did they do? They launched number five. Number five was, to get the name out to the masses. And it was the same thing with Dior. It was the same thing with a lot of other, brands that had fragrances. They licensed out their name to have something cheaper out there that people would get to know the brand and feel like they had a small part of it. And I think that's what we lost in fragrance. I do understand that some of these fragrances that I'm talking about are private lines, so they're a little bit more expensive. They have more expensive actual raw ingredients and materials in them. At the same time, you do not need to charge $1,030 for a 6.8 ounce bottle. It's a little bit excessive. I think at that point of price, we definitely know that it did not cost them anywhere near that to manufacture the fragrance, and you're just paying for the name, which is fine, but with moderation. And I think Tom Ford has lost that. A lot of the new fragrances that he's launched, I have them written down here. I have Mur Mysterious, I have Azure Lime, Electric Cherry, Cherry Smoke, Soleil de Faux, Blas Americana, which I think is an actual repackaging of another different fragrance. A lot of these are going to be mass market. And I think that Tom Ford really has gone into that actual realm. So if you go and you smell Ebon Fume, smell ebony smoke, that's what it means, Ebon Fume. That fragrance is very, I don't know, it's likable. It's going to be a fragrance you can definitely enjoy and appreciate. But at the same time, it's a fragrance that, is not anything revolutionary or groundbreaking or changing the industry in any shape, way, or form. So because of that, we will not be reviewing any more of the brand new releases of Tom. In the number 9 spot, I have another brand, and this is Marc Jacobs. I did, mention that Daisy was very popular whenever Black Orchid launched, and Marc Jacobs as a brand, I think as a brand itself, they've really hit a hard spot. I don't think that they've ever launched a men's fragrance. I think that they've always been women's fragrances. But I'm sorry to say this, and don't get offended at me. Do not go throw hate at me. You can put a thumbs down or thumbs up. I don't really care. But what I'm trying to say here is Marc Jacobs as a brand, unless you are in your early 20s or you're a teenager, you probably should not be wearing this brand. Granted, it's nice. It's a fresh, light, floral type of fragrance line itself. But the problem with that is that it's very generic at this point. It was very, groundbreaking in 2012, 2014, 15, and then I think after 2016 we kind of started seeing like, We've seen this, we've been there, we don't want any more. But I can see the appeal of the actual brand itself and the actual fragrances. But I do think that their packaging is a little bit, cheap. I think it's a little bit boring. I think Marc Jacobs as a designer has not really put his actual design emphasis of his fashion line into the perfumes. I think he kind of went for a more, cheeky type of teenage vibe for his fragrances. And I think that if we were to see a little bit more of Marc Jacobs as a fashion house in fragrance, we would definitely see a better, more refined, more sexy, more grungy, more vampy type of line, which is what the Marc Jacobs brand is all about. In the number 8 spot, I have a line of fragrances. Now, this is not going to be the entire brand, but I have Hermes the Jardin collection. I don't understand the appeal of this fragrance line. I think that it's a line that is at its best lazy. I don't really care for the scents. There's nothing unique about them. I do understand that Hermes as a fragrance house, they tend to make fragrances that are going to be a little bit lighter, more raw ingredients type of fragrances. What I mean by that is you're able to smell the bergamot, you're able to smell the orange, you're able to smell the rose, you're able to smell the grapefruit, or anything that they have in their fragrance. They really want you to be able to smell each ingredient separately. Now, with the Jardin collection, definitely made it a little bit, I don't know, it's a really disappointing line of fragrances. The bottles are not cute, they're ugly if you ask me. The smell itself is nothing to write home about. They are very popular, but at the same time, I do think that they're popular because they are shoved in everyone's faces at Sephora. They are shoved in everyone's faces at the department stores. I think that if they were to switch that out with the cologne lines and show the colognes inside of Sephora, I think those would sell a lot better than the Jardin collection. In the number 7 spot, I have an entire brand, and I will get to why I do not want to review this brand. Erin, which is an Estee Lauder brand. She is an Estee Lauder granddaughter, I believe. So she's Estee Lauder's granddaughter, and she launched her own perfume line. And I believe now she has her entire like homeware. I don't know if she has fashion, but she has her own brand essentially. The problem with this brand, and I've always said this from the get-go, I remember running into this line for the first time at Saks Fifth Avenue. I was an educational person for Dior, and we had gone to Saks Fifth Avenue to do an event. And I remember walking in and seeing this little case. They had these rose type fragrances, and they were Erin. I was like, oh, that's cool. And I remember seeing the price, and I'm like, who is this? But why is this price so expensive? Because she's not a perfumer, she's not a designer, she is, you don't know who she is. So I remember, thinking to myself, that's a little bit, I think self-entitled to think that just because you are, the granddaughter of Estee Lauder, to put such a hefty price point on your fragrances and to make it, quote unquote exclusive. Now, they do have some fragrances that are very popular, but at the same time, I think that the packaging is very reminiscent of Estee Lauder. I think that the packaging is a little bit old, but it's trying to be new and hip and modern and simplistic, but it still dates back to the Estee Lauder old school packaging, which I feel like Estee Lauder has never gotten it together with the packaging. And I don't know, I think that if you're going to charge prices like this, like for example, Killian has a name behind him. Granted, he was new to perfume and he was not a fashion designer, but he had a name behind him. He was part of a Hennessy family. There was a legacy there as to why you wanted to buy it. Jo Malone, which is another Estee Lauder brand, she was a very popular perfumer at the time when she sold her brand over to Estee Lauder. I don't know why she thinks she can sell them for that price. I think that if they were at a lower price point, mid-tier, I would certainly say that they would be probably good fragrances because none of them are going to be, heavy, sexy, sultry fragrances. They're all going to be light and airy and rose petal type fragrances. And I really do not think that they're worth the price. There's no longevity, there's no performance, and there's nothing super special about it. In the number 6 spots, I have Tiffany and Company. So I'm going to very quickly flash on the screen which ones I'm actually talking about because it's the original Tiffany that came out, and I believe it was 2015, 2016, somewhere around that time frame. Now, this fragrance itself is very boring. I really did not expect Tiffany to do something like this, but you have to understand they are through Coty, and Coty typically goes with this blueprint of making a light, powdery, clean type of fragrance vibe, and they usually do it fairly well. And I think the problem with that is, Tiffany and Company has so much history to play on. They could have made an actual fragrance that was very unique, very different, that really was more into the history of Tiffany. I mean, When you think Tiffany and Company, you think Breakfast at Tiffany's, you think Marilyn Monroe singing about him. You think of a bunch of different iconic figures in the world that have talked about Tiffany and Company, and it's a little sad to see that they launched a very generic iris powdery type of fragrance. And I don't see that they've launched anything super, revolutionary. And I think that a lot of these brands really need to tap into their actual history and heritage to launch a fragrance, and not just launch fragrance because it's mass market or it's because it's likable. Because when you do that, you do get fragrances that are going to sell, because obviously everyone wants a fragrance with that brand name on it, but they're not going to be fragrances that 10 years down the road are going to be, staples in your collection. So in the number 5 spot, I have Libre by Yves Saint Laurent, and this is the entire range. I have probably been very vocal. If you're new to my channel, then you don't know. But if you've been around on my channel, you know that I really do not care for this type of fragrance. I think Libre is definitely one of those fragrances that is kind of the catalyst as to why a lot of these fragrances out there are smelling the same. It smells like La Vie Belle. It smells like Armani's My Way. It smells like, Mon Paris kind of too. What these fragrances are essentially is these light florals with, some musky qualities, some citric qualities to it, and a lot of synthetic sugars. And I don't get what the appeal of these fragrances is. I think that, they were really cool in 2016, 2017, but at this point we should have moved on. We should have, tried something different, because it's getting a little old. For the price point that you're paying here, it kind of gives off Victoria's Secret vibes. No shade towards Victoria's Secret or Bath and Body Works vibes, but when you think of Yves Saint Laurent, you think of a lot of different things. He launched Opium, which was a very revolutionary fragrance back in the day. Black Opium kind of played with that, made it a little bit more modern. That was cool. Everyone liked it. Mon Paris was a little bit, a little bit mess, a little bit generic. It's a very copy and paste type of fragrances that they're launching. And I think because of that, it's one of those moments where you're like, do I get it? Do I not get it? It's popular. It sells a lot. Everyone wants Libre. But at the same time, it's one of those fragrances that I definitely think that if you wear it, you're going to blend into the crowd. You're going to get a lot of compliments, sure, because you smell nice. You smell like a sugary, powdery type of snack. But at the same time, it's going to be one of those fragrances that's definitely going to make you blend into the crowd. If you want something like that, then definitely get it. But for me, I won't be reviewing this actual fragrance on this channel, just because I like to go for fragrances that are a little bit more original, a little bit more unique, a little bit different, and that are going to really make you stand out as a person. In the number 4 spot, I do have Love Don't Be Shy by Killian. This one's probably going to make some people get very mad at me, and I'm sorry if you do get mad. I love Killian as a brand. I think that their philosophy as a brand is very nice. I think that they've done a lot of really great fragrances out there. My problem with Killian as a company, though, is I don't know if it's Estee Lauder because they are manufactured through Estee Lauder, or if it's just the brand and how they do things. They have zero performance, they have zero longevity, and they have some pretty high price points. And because of that, I do tend to have a problem with it. Killian as a brand does do some really great fragrances, but this one itself, I have never understood the appeal of it. I prefer, Rolling in Love. I prefer their oud fragrances. I love all of their black bottles as well. But to me, this fragrance is a white floral with powdery touches and sweet elements. I don't know, like I said, maybe it's just me that doesn't like this type of fragrances and I'm being a little bit harsh, but I don't know. I think that white florals can be done in such a different way. We're not seeing it here, and I do get the appeal of this one because I actually do find it to be a nice fragrance. Now, I would not go out and recommend anyone to go and buy this fragrance for the price point that they are wanting, because it's quite pricey and the longevity and performance is just not there. Number 3, I have Paradox by Prada. I thought of reviewing this fragrance for this channel. I thought of buying it, and then I remember going into, I believe it was Sephora, and trying to smell it to see if it was something that I would even be interested in, because I am a Prada fanboy. I do love the brand. I do love its very unique take on fashion. It's very different to anything else. It's kind of like a Loewe type of vibe. And the reason I wanted to try it is because it was a Prada triangle, and it was a very beautiful bottle for its time. I thought it was, something very fun. If you don't know this, Prada was under Coty. They have moved all of their fragrance manufacturing and licensed their name over to L'Oreal, which everyone knows that L'Oreal is very successful when it comes to making fragrances and making money for these brands. And I think Prada was wanting something like that. And they did move it to L'Oreal, and this is the first fragrance that they launched. The problem here comes with L'Oreal. It's a copy and paste fragrance to everything else. I think when we think Prada, we think Infusion the Iris. We think, Carbon, Luna Rosa's Sport. We think of these very different takes on fragrances because that's what Prada is about. But at the same time, they're not going to be the most mass market, most likable type of fragrances. And I think that what happened here is they copied a fragrance from another brand, they pasted it into this pretty bottle, and they threw it on the shelves and said, let's sell it. And it's sold very well, I get it. But it's again one of those powdery, sweet, light floral with a little bit of citric and musky elements to it. It's a very copy and paste fragrance. And I'm not trying to be mean here, but it's one of those fragrances that I really had high hopes for because I'm like, Prada is very different. I feel like, L'Oreal would be able to push whatever Prada decides to launch out there, but they didn't. And they decided to do something that's mass market and appealing to everyone's likes and needs and tastes. But at the same time, you kind of lose that blueprint of the brand itself. In my number 2 spot, I have a fragrance line from Parfums de Marly. Now, I should say Parfums de Marly altogether. I don't understand the pricing for this brand. I get that it's a very luxury line and it's very popular within the actual fragrance community. The issue is here. I don't know who to trust when it comes to buying Parfums de Marly, and you can get it at cheaper price points by buying it from other people. I'm on a lot of different Facebook groups that, sell fragrances, or, they're just talking about fragrances. And I have seen time and time again Delina as an actual fragrance being sold by third party sellers. And while I would like to buy it there because I'm not paying full price for it, I don't know if it's real or not. And that's the problem with this brand. I think that's the reason why I haven't reviewed it myself, because they're very expensive. 30 mils or 1 ounce does cost you $190. Now, that's a little bit ridiculous if you ask me. We're talking about Tom Ford pricing. And although I understand Parfums de Marly and I understand that Delina as a fragrance line is very popular, I also don't get it. I don't understand the appeal of it. It's a very unique fragrance. I do understand that part at least. But at the same time, it's kind of falling back into the same thing that we're talking about, which is that powdery, sweet fragrance. And it does have some very nice elements to it. This one itself, like the nutmeg in it and the rhubarb, which makes it a little bit different. At the same time, we're kind of still getting that same blueprint of a fragrance. I do want to try some Parfums de Marly on this channel, and like I said, I might try this one. It's not for sure, but at the same time, I just do not get the hype for this brand. I don't understand it. I never have. I remember buying a Parfums de Marly fragrance back in the day and getting to the cash register, and the lady's like, "You will be paying $260." And I was like, "What? I've never even heard of this brand. Why are you charging me that much?" That's what I feel about Parfums de Marly. And in the number 1 spot is a fragrance by Francis Kurkdjian, or Maison Francis Kurkdjian. And I have here Baccarat Rouge. Boy, this is going to be a juicy one. I love Baccarat Rouge. I remember first buying it when it first launched. It was an exclusive partnership and launch with Neiman Marcus. It was exclusive altogether to Neiman Marcus, a department store. And I remember thinking the whole history behind it, or the story behind it, that it's a partnership with Baccarat, which is a glass making company from Italy. And I was like, oh, this is so cool, the 540s, because that's I think the temperature that it takes to make the glass. And still a brand new brand. He was still kind of new to the fragrance industry, kind of making his own way, if you will. And I was very excited. I bought the bottle and I was like, this is very different. It's very unique. It's very creative. And I think that it's something that, might go well. It was also extremely long wearing. This fragrance did wear 4 days. I'm telling you, I sprayed it on my coat when I was at work one time. And I remember checking on that coat a couple of months later down the line, and it still smelled like it. So that's the ambroxan in this fragrance, because it does have ambroxan. And I did really, really like it. Now, the problem is this. Francis Kurkdjian has launched a couple of fragrances that smell almost identical to it. For example, Burberry Her, and I know some people out there are going to be like, no, it doesn't. It doesn't smell like it. It does. Really sit down and put both of them side by side together, or spray them blindly on yourself, or have someone, spray them blindly on themselves. You won't be able to tell the difference. They smell almost identical. I think that when he did that, he kind of cheapened or, lightened his brand a little bit. If he diluted his brand just a tad bit. And because of that, I don't understand the pricing for this brand. And I also do have a gripe with this. The bottles are very cheap to me. Their quality is not the greatest. And while I understood that whenever I did buy it the first time because he was still an independent brand, the brand's now owned by LVMH, which owns Celine, which owns Dior, which owns Louis Vuitton, and all of these other brands are able to have great packaging. This brand should have great packaging as well, but they don't. I think that we're still stuck with those bottles that came out back in the day, and I think they're very cheap, kind of plasticky type of vibes to me. I don't care for them. I don't care for this fragrance. Like I said, there's a lot of dupes out there. You can get the Dossier one, which is almost identical to it. You can get loads of different fragrances that, resemble this fragrance and really get that, very beautiful saffron, which is in this fragrance. I think this is what makes this fragrance very unique. But like I said, if you're looking for an exact dupe, in my opinion, the Dossier one and the Burberry Her one are 1-to-1. Well, that is today's video. These are the fragrances that I will not be reviewing on this channel or do not want to review on this channel. What do you guys think of them? Leave me down the comments down here. Put some comments down here for me. Let me know what you guys think. Also, let me know what fragrances you would not like to see on this channel. I am very curious to see your response. Also, make sure to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe for more fragrance related content. And I hope to see you on the next video.